my next trick, I'm going to find out what brakes are bad on my wife's Mercedes-Benz, and while I'm at it, I'm going to change oil on her. So come on along, let's see if we can get her done. I'm going to take the car on over to the shop, stick her on jack stands, and go from there. Alrighty, got my car in the shop. One of the first things I need to do is jack it up. This is a 2008 Mercedes-Benz E320, which is a W211 body, or whatever you want to call it. And right underneath here is a pad for jacking. There's one in the rear, and there's two more on the opposite side of the vehicle. I'm gonna stick my jack here. I'm gonna jack the car up. Then I'll place jack stands underneath the front lower control arm in that area. Then I'm going to jack up the rear of the car and support it. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the lug nuts. And they are 17 millimeter. All right, got my lug nuts off. But my tires are still on. Why? Because the aluminum on the steel rims like to get stuck. Now these tires were changed and rotated probably 3 weeks ago. So I thought they'd come off a little easier, and they still might. So what I got to do now is I got to beat them off. And I will hit them on the inside of the tire with the sledgehammer and try to persuade them to come off. Don't give me no crap about it. I'm not the one who designed the car, which they all do, no matter what model, what brand. Aluminum on a steel hub, this is what happens. We'll give it a couple whacks with this little old hammer. Oh yeah, not a problem. That was not a problem, but the last time I had to take them off, I beat the living crap out of the damn thing, but thank God they've been off a few times in the last couple months. So I'm gonna go around and take all the rest of them loose. Hopefully it'll just take a love tap like that. I don't know, let's see if you can see this, but look down in here, you'll see there's a lot of meat left on that brake pad. Now look up in the inside, and I can see the same thing. This is the driver's side front, so if the front passenger side is just as good, I'm gonna leave the front alone. It does look like the rotors are gonna need to be turned next time I put brakes on the front though. See, this rear brake is started to cut into the disc. You can see the marks, but you can't feel it. It's not like it's really indented. Ideally, it either needs to be turned or replaced. And if you look down in here, you'll see obviously that the pad is worn all the way off. I'll try to clean up that scuff on there. Yeah, technically you want to replace that disc. If it was grooved real bad, I would. I also live way the hell away from any kind of major city, and to get Mercedes parts out here isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. But anyways, I'll replace the rears, and perhaps when I replace the front next time, even if the rears look good, if I'm going to be turning rotors, I'll turn all of them or replace whatever needs to be replaced. Now, I told you I wasn't going to replace my front brakes, but since I like y'all guys so much, I'm going to take one side apart so I can show you how it's done. All right, so just remember that. Give me some likes and shares and all that crud, because I'm being nice. If we look up inside here, this is the good pad. This is the outside of the brake pad. This pad is glued to here. This is what wears out. This is the whole rotor. Can't really see the other side, but the outside pad's basically the same. So if you take it apart to put pads on, your pads are probably worn out. So when you try to put thicker pads on, this caliper is not going to drop right back into place. The pistons extends out as the pads wear. So you got to collapse this piston to make room for the thicker new pads. But all I do is I take a screwdriver and I put it between the caliper and the rotor, and I just pry on my screwdriver and it's just collapsing the piston. And I'm not going to go all the way because I don't need to put new pads on, but now you can see it kind of wobbles around in there. Now you can see it kind of wobbles around in there. All right, so I do that before I do anything. On this side, I don't have the little wear indicator deal in there. It's a little wire goes inside the, hooks up there, so when it wears, it tells you need to put brakes on. And I guess they don't put it on the left-hand side because I don't see any wire that's supposed to come to the caliper. Anyways, let's move on. So I got to bust this nut loose. Bust that nut loose. All along, I'm holding the back side. It's a pin that goes here with the hex on the end of the pin and the nut that screws into the ass end of the pin. So I hold the hex with a 17 millimeter and I put a 13, which I'll use off the 12-point side to bust her loose, and you just take the nut off. You've got the same thing on the bottom. So I'll bust that one loose. But this just comes right out of there. Now, you don't want to let your brake caliper hang by the brake line. And here's your pads. They basically come right out. There's like a little spring there holding them in. There's a little spring right there on both ends holding them in. And on both sides, you just pop the pad out. There you go. And I've got lots of meat left on that pad. No need to change these brakes. Now you can pull these studs out, clean them, relubricate them, and shove them back in. So you want these to build the float around in there and move in and out easily, because as you apply your brakes, that caliper moves around, and as the brakes wear, the caliper moves around. So you want these to move freely, and they move really good. So I'm not jacking with them. So next thing I need to do is set my caliper back in place. Put my little bolts back in. Put my little bolts back in. Get them both started before I hunker down on one, which really don't matter much because that pin floats around, so even if one was tight, you could move it around. But usually when I put a series of bolts in, I try to get them all started before I tighten one up. That, you know, in general, to help prevent tightening something up and putting something in a bind. Then when you tighten up the rest of the bolts, you think they're good, but they're actually in a bind. So that's not too hard to do these brakes, is it? You collapse it. See how loose this brake pad is now? Because I collapsed that piston earlier. So when I get in the car, after doing the rear brakes and everything, because I'm going to collapse the pistons there, when I get in the car, I got to pump these brakes and work these pistons out, because if I slap her in gear and decide I'm going down the road, I'm going to wreck this, because I'm not going to have brakes for the first couple of pumps. So you need to pump it, pump these pistons out to get contact with the brake pads. I'm going to tighten down my bolts, and I'm going to get to work on the rear brakes. So the caliper right here is held on by two bolts coming in from the rear, and it is a T40, I believe, a T40. Shoves up in there like so, and there's one right down below here. So first thing I'm going to do, let that fall on the ground for now. I'm shove my screwdriver between the caliper and the disc. I'm going to pull out on it. I'm collapsing the piston. Feels like it's all the way collapsed. See how it's just floating around in there now? See how she just floats in there now? I'm going to take my T40s, I'm going to pull my 2 bolts out through the rear. Caliper off. The inside brake pad's got this little clip built into the backside. It just shoves into the hole there in the piston and snaps in. She's worn quite thin. And I've got the outside pad. All right, I got my new pads. I'm going to snap this one here into the caliper. Collapsing the piston down a little bit more. Should just sit right on there. Where is my T40? Dang, can't keep my hands on that T40 to save my butt. Just a quick note, this is the passenger side. This little clip here was not on the driver's side. It's a little anti-rattle clip or of sorts. So I'll have to find one for the other side. Also, this one has a little sensor that goes back in here, plugs in right here for the brake wear. This little center hub here, the rim's center hub slides over it. Actually, if you look right in here, that white is corrosion from the aluminum rim. I'll take a screwdriver, I'm going to pop that off there, wire brush it, and then I'm going to put some anti-seize on there. I'll also wire brush the inside of the rim here. I will not put anti-seize on lug nuts or anything like that, so I'm just putting it on this little area right here, hoping that if I ever have a flat on the road, I'll be able to get my damn tire off. Because last time I worked on this car, I had to beat the tar out of these things to get them off of here. It can't be good for the tires. So, anyways, just a little bit of never seize. Hopefully prevents it from seizing up. Okay, just in case you don't know, when you put lug nuts on, you want to cross torque them, which means you tighten one up. Really, the best thing to do is snug them a little bit. Snug one, then go straight across, then straight across it, and kind of go in a cross pattern. This keeps, if you over tighten one side, the other side could actually be in a bind, and even though the lug nuts get tight, the rim is actually in a bind, and driving down the road it may work itself out of the bind, and you've actually got a loose rim. So, cross torque. And after I'm done cross torquing, then I just go in a circle. Yes, I'm certain there's a torque spec for the lug nuts, but in all my years I've never used a torque wrench on lug nuts, and even when I was in school in 1980, I can't say I ever remember using a torque wrench on lug nuts. And I know I see a lot of tire shops using them these days. Let me ask you a question though. Not saying they're wrong. If they torque them right, they're doing better than I am. But watch them. If they hammer them tight with the air gun, then you see them walk around and they stick it on, then it goes click, Let's stick on the next one. Click, click. Good, move on. How the hell they know the torque is at, let's say 125 pounds or whatever it might be. If it clicks right away, it's for certain, most certainly it's over torqued. It could be 250 pounds, but it's going to click at 125. So you'd want to run them down with the air gun to something less than what the torque is. Then you put the torque wrench on and you finish it. Click, and there's proper ways to use a torque wrench too. So don't be too snazzled by their little dance they do with their torque wrench, because if they do it the way I just said, they're just trying to impress you. As I mentioned earlier, the last step to the brake job is to pump the pedal. See the pedal go to the floor? It's coming up. And I'm going to start it and just use it with the power brakes for a minute. Make sure I build up the pedal. Pedal feels good. It doesn't. Yep, pedal feels good. I hope this video on doing brakes on my Mercedes W211 body style E320 Blue Tech helped you out. Please like and subscribe to my videos. And I know I cut a bunch of corners and I half-assed a few things, but now you know how to take brakes apart and put them back on. And if you, I like to leave safety up to everybody else. I've been doing stuff for quite a few years, and I do things my way, and may not always be the right way. But it sure as hell has worked for me, and I still got it on my fingers. And so, thanks for watching my video. Please like and share and subscribe.